What if Squid Game was played by the VIPs instead? In red light, green light, they'd use everything in their power to avoid getting shot. One might even buy the doll so it stops targeting him. Then during Dalgona, instead of doing it themselves, they'll have their private chef and servants to handle it for them. And back at the dorm, they'll have queen-size beds and eat steak almost every dinner. Meanwhile, Gihan gets whatever scraps are left. Every time you die, you reset to day one. Eventually, you're going to win. The only question is, how long? In red light, green light, you could literally win on your first try, as long as you didn't panic on the first attempt. During Dalgona, if you pick the umbrella and failed, you can just go for the triangle next. And in Glass Bridge, even if you go first every time, with enough tries, you'll eventually figure out the right path. This is what the first Squid Game probably looked like. In 1988, the organization was still small, which meant fewer players and smaller prize money. The games would have taken place on a tiny field. Guards are posted at every corner, the players are crammed in the middle, and the VIPs watch from the bleachers. Without the animatronic tech back then, it was just one guy with a megaphone screaming, and with no motion tracking cameras, the guards themselves had to stare you down and shoot the second you moved. This is what Squid Game will look like in 1,000 years. There are 16 sets of tiles just like the Glass Bridge, and stepping on the wrong one would send you flying straight out. To make it even worse, there are 2 laser-sharp jumping ropes that will only continue to spin faster as time goes on. So the longer you take to cross, the deadlier it'll become. To beat a team of fully trained Squid Game soldiers in tug of war, you'd need about 20 Gihuns on the other end. But with minions, you'd need about 100 of them and pray they don't wander off in the middle of the match. If you did the same thing with Shrek, you need just about 2 of him. But if you brought in Optimus Prime, you'd only need 1 to transform and roll them out. What if a zombie outbreak happened inside Squid Game? Even if only 1 player got infected, with everyone else in the same room, it wouldn't take long before the entire dorm starts biting. So before that happens, take the pillows and wrap them around you to prevent bites, then grab the metal bars of the bunk bed and use them as a weapon. Most importantly, find a safe place that will isolate you from everyone else. Lock the door and make absolutely sure you're completely alone. What if Gihan turned out to be an evil person? Instead of helping others survive, he'd do the exact opposite, taking out as many players as he could. He'd use tricks, distractions, and sabotage just to make sure no one else stood a chance. His actions would get so dark that even the frontman might start wondering if Gihan was too dangerous to stay alive. So in the end, he becomes the newest recruit for the organization itself. What if Glass Bridge had 10,000 tiles instead of 18? Each tile is still a 50-50 chance, but instead of 1 straight path, you now have to invent your own route across. In the original, your odds were 1 in 262,144 with 18 steps. But in a 10,000 tile room, you might take 50 steps, 100 steps, or if you're unlucky, all 10,000, giving you odds of 1 in 2 to the power of 10,000. What if Glass Bridge and Jump Rope were combined into 1 game? Picking the right glass tile is already stressful enough, but now every player has to jump in rhythm non-stop. And because human stamina has a limit, if the jumper takes too long to choose, the rest of the pack runs out of energy fast. By the time the lead player falls from the wrong tile, everyone behind already tripped down from exhaustion. What if Glass Bridge was 10 times longer? With 180 pairs of tiles, if you only have the original 16 players, the odds of reaching the end would be 1 in 490 nonillion. Basically, you'd have a better chance of winning the lottery billions of times in a row than crossing the bridge alive. But if you add 10 times more players too, now it's fair until you reach the end and turn around, because now it's time for round 2. What if the guards were the players and the players were the guards instead? Even though the guards aren't used to competing, they've seen the games play out dozens of times, so they'd probably stay calm under pressure. But the same can't be said for the players. Hand a gun to someone drowning in debt, and they're not aiming for fair play, they're aiming at everyone else. Most importantly, the piggy bank hanging above the dorm room. What if Hitler played Squid Game? He'd try delivering a dramatic speech to win everyone over, but they will just walk away, mostly because they don't understand German. And since nobody wants to be near him, he'd get stuck with an old man, a washed-up rapper, and a guy who has no idea what planet he's on in tug of war. And after getting ignored all day, he'd finally declare war on the front man, where his years of experience might actually come into play. John Wick joined Squid Game? During red light, green light, instead of playing normally, he'd use someone as a meat shield to get to the other side fast. Then during Dalgona, he will carve the candy not with the needle provided, but with a pencil. And unlike Yi-hun, a skilled hitman like John Wick would actually be able to do the rebellion on his own, eventually reaching the control room with just a pencil. What if Squid Game was full of old people? During Dalgona, anyone who tries Gi-hun's famous licking trick would probably have their dentures fall right out. In Tug of War, they might manage to stand up, but the moment the game starts, you'd hear a chorus of backs cracking across the arena. And if they tried to start the midnight brawl, the old folks would just sleep right through it. So to get them to play, the front man will have to improvise. What if players fell into water instead of concrete and glass bridge? Well, from 65 feet up, you'd hit the water at around 44 miles per hour. If you belly flop at that speed, you'd suffer nasty injuries, possibly knocking you out, leaving you to drown. But professional cliff divers jump from even higher heights and walk away with just a few bruises. So if you fall the right way, feet first like a pencil, you'd probably survive. What if Squid Game players weren't allowed to sleep at all? Every time someone's eyes closed, a guard would smack them awake with a pink frying pan. After 24 hours, reaction time and coordination will start to drop, and it gets worse from here, because by 48 hours, the body will force itself to sleep. If you don't get it together, the frying pan might kill you. After 120 hours, the brains finally start shutting down, and thinking doesn't work anymore. What if Squid Game had 10 times more players? Well, the dorm would be so jam-packed, you'd barely have room to breathe. In red light, green light, one tiny bump could set off a domino effect, knocking people down and wiping out hundreds at once. During Dalgona, every corner would be crammed, and players might elbow each other and crack their candy by mistake. In Glass Bridge, because the sheer crowd would not fit the starting platform, many unlucky players might tumble off before even getting their first step in. What if Squid Game only had one guard? Well, the games could still work. Barely. In red light, green light, instead of snipers, this lone guard would have to pick off every moving player himself. During Dalgona, he'd be stuck walking around, checking hundreds of cookies one by one, then shooting whoever messed up. But Tug of War and Glass Bridge would be easy, since players mostly eliminate on their own. The only problem is, with 456 people and just one guard, they will soon realize rebelling is easier than playing. What if Squid Game only had one player? Well, technically, the games could still run. Red light, green light doesn't need any other people to win. And Dalgona is meant to be played solo anyways. Tug of War and Marbles can still be played only with a little bit of improvisation from the guards. But everything might fall apart in Glass Bridge unless they lessen the tiles to choose from. And to make the final game even more entertaining, because the lone player can't face another contestant, he'd have to play directly against the doll itself. What if Squid Game had no guards at all? Believe it or not, the games would still go on. Without a single human in charge, robots will lead players to the next game. And back at the dorm, with no one to serve meals, players have to rely on vending machines that only activate after each round. Most importantly, losing wouldn't involve getting shot anymore. Each player would wear a collar linked to the game system, so if they lose, it explodes. What if Squid Game had no rules at all? Players could bring anything they want, meaning they could cheat every game with zero consequences. And since nothing is off limits, they could play each round however they want. Or maybe not play at all. When the next game starts, the arena would be completely empty because everyone stayed in the dorm making up their own games instead. They'd even start betting with the piggy bank money because there's no such rule stopping them from doing so. What if Squid Game lasts forever? Every time someone dies, new players are brought in the very next day. Each round mixes old games with brand new ones, getting harder and stranger every time. And the cycle never stops. Once one game ends, another begins in an instant, endlessly reshuffling survivors and newcomers. Which means you could technically live forever, if you've got what it takes. What if Squid Game played Among Us? There are 10 players and everyone thinks 2 are imposters. They're stuck on a broken spaceship and they have to fix it fast. Meanwhile, the imposters have to kill everyone first. Each time someone dies, players can vote to eject whoever they think is an imposter. But here's the twist, there are actually no imposters at all. The ship's just filled with deadly traps, leaving 10 terrified people accusing each other until none remain. This is what Squid Game arm wrestling would look like. Two players sit across from each other with deadly sharp spikes on both equal ends. So the loser doesn't just lose, they get stabbed as well. Now, during the game, the knives will slowly rise higher every second, closing in until one player eventually loses. What if Squid Game played dodgeball? It begins with two teams of 10 players facing off on floating platforms. The goal is to hit the other side to eliminate them. But unlike regular dodgeball, when you're hit, you don't get eliminated right away. It triggers a 10-second red timer where you can pass that elimination to a teammate by hitting them with the same ball. Each round lasts 4 minutes, and the team with the most players left wins.